Hello and welcome to the Blind Low Vision webinar. I'm Lenny Frame and I'm a resource consultant with Children's Inclusion Support Services. During this webinar, I'll be talking with you about a variety of visual impairments, as well as strategies you can implement into your program in order to help create an inclusive environment. Here's a breakdown of what we'll be covering in today's webinar. So we're going to start with an activity. For this activity, you'll need a paper plate or a piece of paper with a hard surface underneath, such as a notebook, and a writing utensil. Once you have your items, place the plate or paper on top of your head. Hold the paper with one hand and the pencil in the other. Now draw a snowman starting with the larger ball, then the medium ball, and finally the small ball. Next, draw the arms, a hat, eyes, and a carrot nose. Once your snowman is complete, have a look at the final result. How did it feel to not see what you were doing? Was it a little bit disconcerting? A little abstract? Here in Canada, most of us have had the experience of seeing and building a snowman, but it's probably safe to say that many of the drawings do not look like the snowman in the slide. For children who are blind or have very low vision, their interpretation of how they see things can be different from that of a person with sight. For them, the real experience of touch has a lot more value. So over the next few slides, we'll go over some common misconceptions about the ability of children with a visual impairment being successful in early learning programs. True or false? Children with visual impairments can be fully included and successful in early learning programs in school. This is true. Children with visual impairments can be successfully included with some adaptations and accommodations. With the appropriate strategies and supports, any child with a visual impairment can be successfully included in all aspects of an early learning environment. True or false? A person who's blind can see shapes and shadows. This is false. A person who's blind is not able to see at all or use vision in a functional way. A person who is blind cannot see shadows or differences in light. Someone who is legally blind has a visual acuity of 2200 or worse. And a person who is totally blind has a total loss of sight. True or false? A person who's blind will develop a sixth sense. This is also false. A person who is blind or has a visual impairment does not develop a sixth sense. Because individuals with visual impairments cannot rely on vision, they must rely on their other senses. So for example, a person who is blind may have a more acute sense of hearing and may use echolocation by clicking their tongue and listening to echoes in order to allow them to differentiate things in the environment, such as cars or a wall within a room. Before we head into the next few slides, I want to give you an idea of what it might be like to experience some various eye conditions through the simulator. In order to access the simulator, click on the link or paste the link into your browser. Please note, in order to experience the simulator, you must allow access to your camera. Just a few notes for when you are in the simulator. The red eye icon on the bottom left of your screen allows you to select an eye condition, and on the bottom right of your screen, you can select the severity of that condition. Please feel free to take a few minutes to explore the simulator now, or you can save it to explore for later after the webinar. It's really interesting and gives you a pretty good idea of what some people have to face on a daily basis. So what is visual impairment? Visual impairment refers to any condition in which eyesight cannot be corrected to what is considered normal. The term is used to refer to a loss of vision that makes it difficult or impossible to complete daily tasks without specialized adaptations. The following are categories of visual impairments. In Canada, a person is legally blind if their best eye has less than 20/200 vision or less with the help of glasses or contact lenses. Having 20/200 vision means that a person cannot be more than 6 meters away to see what a person with normal vision can see from 60 meters away. Some people need to wear glasses with very strong prescriptions. An individual who's blind is not able to see at all. Their vision cannot be used in a functional way, and many people who are blind use guide sticks to navigate their environments. Individuals with low vision will have some ability to see. Low vision can range from only seeing the difference between light and dark to seeing objects in particular ways. Under different environmental conditions, this vision can be used in a functional way to accomplish a variety of daily tasks. Cortical vision impairment, or CVI, is a decreased visual response due to a neurological problem affecting the visual part of the brain. Typically, a person with CVI has an eye exam or has an eye condition that cannot account for the abnormal visual behavior. For example, an individual's vision may change day by day or over time. So the individual might be able to see an object one day and not be able to see the same object the next day. So what can educators do to support children with a visual impairment in an early learning environment? There are many things to consider when setting up the physical space of your room. The goal of creating defined spaces is to provide incentive for movement, exploration, and independent interaction with the environment. The use of defined spaces should change and expand as the child grows to meet individual needs. It should be viewed as a lifelong organizational strategy to enhance efficiency, self-reliance, and confidence. A defined space is an area in which objects are kept accessible and are easy to detect. When setting up your room, promote consistent spaces, and when adjustments need to be made, show and tell the child. Make changes in the environment gradual and give the child time to adjust to the changes before adding more. Ensure that you reorientate the child if any changes are made to the physical space. Keep in mind obstacles such as carpet corners and uneven surfaces. Set up wide spaces for use of independent mobility, such as the use of a cane. And promote high contrast by putting tape on steps, furniture, and carpets to define areas. Minimize visual clutter by reducing background clutter, as this can be the difference between a child being able to see an object and not. Use visual images that are simple, uncluttered, and bold. Arrange the environment so that lighting and seating help the child see as much as possible. Depending on the child, some children may need additional lighting and other children need reduced lighting. For example, the use of a light box may support some children's exploration. However, some children need to sit with their backs to the window to reduce glare, and some children may benefit from glare-free laminate. Encourage the child to use any residual visual they have. For children who can express themselves, ask them to describe what they see so educators can provide appropriate support. Vision strengths can be identified through observational trial and error with the support of a blind low vision consultant. For example, experiment with different colored objects to see if one is easier to locate than another. Although play can be used as a teaching technique, the individual child may need to be taught to play, as children with visual impairments do not have the visual cues to see how a toy works or how peers use it. For example, consider a car going down a ramp. Once a car goes down the ramp, it disappears, and the child may not know where it went. Verbal cues and hand-under-hand prompting can be used to model and teach play skills. Always provide names of objects and describe what that object is used for. Model and facilitate the different ways to play with toys. For example, if a child is throwing a toy car, model how to drive it and try modeling car noises. When providing hands-on experiences, Use real objects and allow the child to manipulate them. Provide hands-on experiences and structure experiences to allow the child to explore and discover. For experiences such as water play, use real objects like sticks, leaves, or flowers, and try asking questions such as, what happens if the water gets really cold? Make sure to provide verbal cues to distinguish between real and not real objects. When using representations of real objects, such as toy cars or plastic fruit, always specify that the item is a toy or is not real, with statements such as, the toy car is in front of you, or you're playing with a toy vacuum. Watch how the child plays and observe what their preferred toys are. Some children gravitate towards soft objects, and some children have aversions to certain textures or don't like sticky feeling. Start with what they like to promote independent play. Also, make sure to give lots of opportunity to repeat an activity so that the child can learn what to expect during play. The following are some ideas on how to adapt play activities for children with visual impairments. For tactile cues, gradually incorporate tactile cues on toys or items such as kitchen sets or bins. To assist the child in locating and returning toys to a shelf, place the item on a contrasting surface or provide an outline of where that particular toy is to be placed on the shelf. If toys are kept in bins, glue a piece of the toy, such as a Lego block, onto the bin for tactile identification. Keep toys in the same spot and always within reach to have them easily accessible to the child. Many board games can be adapted with tactile cues. For example, you can use a glue gun or pipe cleaners on paper to make boxes for tic-tac-toe. Other games you can adapt include dominoes, bingo, Connect Four, and checkers. Tray or bin activities can be used to help with orientation and assist the child to know where the boundaries are of the activity. Trays can also be used as a tactile cue to help the child distinguish between different activities such as lunch or sensory. Items can be glued down onto a tray to help a child learn a specific skill. You can also use two-sided tape or Velcro to fasten items to the tray. When considering cause and effect toys, some children with low vision benefit from activities with lights, such as a light box, glow sticks, light bright, or flashlights. Switch toys and cause and effect push-button toys with bigger buttons might also be more adaptable to children with visual impairments. Take a look at this picture. How could this educator help this child access and explore the toys around them? How could they ensure that this child is included in the group? If you're viewing this webinar with a group, please take a few minutes to discuss your ideas on how to support this child. Some techniques this educator could use are verbal cues and hand-under-hand prompting. Verbal cues are prompts delivered through spoken language to help an individual understand where they are in space in relation to other objects or people. Using verbal cues may help a child understand where they are in space in relation to people and objects. For example, by stating the toys behind you or the toys in front of you, you can help them adapt where they are in space. Hand-under-hand prompting refers to physical prompting that involves the adult guiding a child's hand from underneath. A child with a visual impairment may not be able to see the results of their actions or the effects that they are producing. It is critical to verbally describe what is happening to help the child make sense of situations in the environment. Before interacting with a child who has a visual impairment, always introduce yourself and encourage the child's peers to introduce themselves as well. Use verbal cues to prepare the child for what to expect when an action is about to take place by using their name and verbalizing what will be happening. For example, Charlie, I'm going to pick you up. During play, use verbal cues to help the child locate items such as the toy car is beside you, or the wooden blocks are on your right side. Use a verbal cue to help the child know what is happening around them. such as Emily is beside you or Max is beside you, playing with the plastic animals. Verbal cues can also be paired with other types of prompting, such as hand under hand, tapping, or activating a toy to create a sound to help cue the child to the object. Hand under hand refers to the action of an adult exploring an object and showing the expectation with the child's hand on top of their hand. Unlike hand over hand, where the adult is guiding a child's hand, when using the hand under hand strategy, the adult is the one touching the object. This gives the child an opportunity to explore at their own discretion, which can help reduce touch sensitivity and increase autonomy. This strategy can be used when learning a new skill or exploring a new toy. For example, when introducing a sensory activity, the adult is taking the risk by touching the materials with the child's hand safely on top of theirs, and when the child is ready, they can explore. This is always paired with verbal cues. Another non-invasive approach to cue a child when they require more than verbal prompting is to gently tap the child's elbow to encourage the child to reach. For example, if helping a child onto a bike, along with using verbal cues, gently tap the child's elbow to cue the child to move their arms forward so that they could hold on to the handlebars. Feet under feet, much like hand under hand, can also help in learning. Have child's feet over an adult's feet to demonstrate the actions, such as those you might do during an action song, like going on a bear hunt. A tactile schedule is a schedule that uses real objects or tactile cues to help the child understand the sequence of events in their daily routines. Tactile schedules help the child to predict how their day will go and what activities or transitions come next. Tactile schedules should be paired with verbal cues. To create a tactile schedule within your program, look at your daily schedule and choose objects or symbols that will represent each transition and activity that are meaningful to the child. These items will be used to cue the child to every transition. For example, you can use a hat for outdoor play or a soother for sleep. Give the child the object to explore from their tactile schedule before the transition or activity occurs, and pair it with a verbal cue. The goal is for the child to make the connection between the object and the transition or activity that is about to occur. For this to be successful, all educators need to be consistent. Use the same item to represent a specific activity every time and to move to the activity as soon as the child has felt the concrete object. As the child's skills develop, they can be offered a variety of objects at the same time to be able to anticipate what their morning or afternoon schedule will be like. How can we support successful transitions for children with visual impairments? Depending on the child's ability, additional time and adult assistance may be required to support their independence with mobility and self-help tasks. Tactile cues can be used to help the child identify their cubby, circle mat, and belongings. For example, you can use raised fabric paint on shoes and sandpaper or felt on their cubby. Remember, tactile cues should always be paired with verbal cues. A trailing surface could be provided for the child when traveling from one room to another or from the room to outdoor play. Some examples you can use are bubble wrap, rug runners down a hallway, or tape along the wall that can be traced with a finger. Using the buddy system and pairing the individual with a peer model not only facilitates transitions, but can also foster peer relationships. To reduce crowding the child when lining up, have the child be first or last in line. You can also have consistent auditory and attention cues, such as music, bells, and lights. Most children with a visual impairment will learn how to dress in the same way and at the developmental stage as any other child. A younger child will need to be taught the names of each article of clothing. This is easier if you are consistent in the order that you take off or put clothing on. Allow time and opportunity to practice dressing skills. Have a visual picture and tactile cue to identify the child's space. Minimize crowding, provide ample space by placing the child's cubby at the end. This also makes it easier for the child to find their cubby. Some children may benefit by having a chair or a stool to use for dressing routines. Break down steps using verbal cues and prompting that promote success. Just something to be aware of. Children with visual impairments may sometimes demonstrate sensitivity to hats or earmuffs due to interference with their auditory processing. Signs of readiness for toilet training are the same for children with visual impairments as they are for other children. When a child is in the process of toilet training, encourage parents to dress the child in clothing that will allow the child to be independent in dressing, such as elastic waistbands and Velcro fasteners. Use verbal cues to assist the child to let them know where items are, and use first-then statements to break down the routine. Consider using a footstool if or when the child is sitting on a regular-sized toilet, and consider using a ring reducer on the toilet seat. Potties can also be used when a child is being introduced to toileting. Children may also benefit from handrails or wall support. Something to keep in mind is that some children may experience heightened senses, such as a heightened sense of smell, or the sound of echoes in the bathroom may be overwhelming for them. If you're using a common bathroom, have the child go in before or after a group so that the experience is less overwhelming for them. Many children with visual impairments master eating skills with little difficulty. Others may be delayed in learning to eat. However, the introduction of foods and eating skills should happen at the usual age. Some children with visual impairments may have difficulty learning some of these skills as they have not developed sufficient wrist control or supination of the forearm, which is turning the arm so that the palm of the hand faces up. The development of motor skills needed to manage utensils can be taught through play in a variety of activities and tasks. It should be noted that many children with visual impairments are hesitant or can be hesitant to touch and handle unfamiliar objects, including foods. Therefore, may be less motivated to seek out and discriminate foods on their plate. Having a cloth nearby so the child can wipe their hands will support this exploration, as it will provide the child with a safety net. Scanning techniques can be taught and reinforced to help the child search for food on their tray or plate. An older child can be taught to look for foods based on the positions of a clock, such as the apples are located at 12 o'clock and your drink is located at 3 o'clock. Some things to consider to help make circle time inclusive for children with blind low vision are defining the space. To define the space, use foam placemats, felt, or assistive seating such as the wiggle seat. Provide hands-on experiences and real items to explore. So if you're talking about fruit, provide real fruits. Use a feely box or bag with real objects. Talk about the textures of these objects as well as what they are used for. Provide hands-on activities which allow children to experience the sequential steps involved in creating a final product, such as baking bread or cookies or making lemonade. Ensure the child experiences the whole process from the beginning to the final product. For items such as band instruments, try labeling them with tactile cues such as braille, fuzzy stickers, or different tactile materials to promote independence when choosing. As well, help the child learn to identify the toy based on how it feels. Blindism is a repetitive behavior observed in some children with blind low vision. To prevent blindism, such as eye poking, arm flapping, or rocking, provide an object for the child to hold at circle time. This could be something that is related to the circle. To support peer interaction, talk to the children about the child's behaviors, as they may have questions and may be apprehensive if they are uncertain. When possible, provide the child with something to hold related to the story or song, and if not possible, offer a fidget toy. Support peer interactions during this time by describing what others are doing, inviting other children to join in, implementing joint activities, narrating what is happening around the child, and teaching children to tell their peers how they feel. The following are some ideas and resources to set up and facilitate art and sensory play. Provide multisensory activities that promote the use of the other senses, such as pair smelling jars with the real objects. Encourage children to touch, smell, and taste different things if appropriate. To ensure children's well-being, verify allergies before starting this activity. Increase motivation by incorporating a child's interests and adding preferred toys or objects to sensory play. Some children may not be comfortable touching materials. Adapt these materials to support participation by using strategies such as offering sand or Play-Doh in a Ziploc bag. Strengthening dexterity and awareness of different textures like smooth, soft, or bumpy is important for pre-Braille development. Provide hands-on experiences and real items to explore. Provide hands-on activities which allow children to experience the sequential steps involved in creating a final project. As mentioned before, baking or making something like lemonade. Combine field trips with meaningful cooking or baking experiences or projects. Play listening lotto or tapes of everyday familiar sounds for the children to identify. The following are some examples of fine motor and tactile activities and how they can be used in the program. In Activity B, the balls and muffin tins, the child counts 1 to 3 down the left side of the muffin pan and 4 to 6 down the right side. Rubber circles are glued inside the pan to indicate the number in order for the child to learn the feeling represented as Braille dots. The child places the balls in the order of 1 to 6. Once they've mastered that skill, you can challenge them by asking them to hand back the balls in a random order. In Activity C, tray and tongs, tweezers are used to pick up small objects to be placed in the taller jar. This activity fosters lateral movements, such as right to left and back and forth. This activity also promotes the use of descriptive words, such as soft, hard, fluffy, and smooth. It also works as a hand and arm strengthening activity. Again, these are just a few activity examples. I'm sure you and your team will come up with many more. Activities from our CISS newsletter is included in your handouts. I highly encourage you to please share your activities with us, as we're always looking to expand resources and ideas to help out other programs. Outdoor play can sometimes be a challenge for children with visual impairments. Safety is always a priority. It may be helpful to provide some play areas that have a defined boundary, such as a sandbox, a mat with toys, or a low table within the larger space for a child with a visual impairment to feel secure in and venture out from. If not already constructed, some areas such as bike paths will need to have a boundary created for safety. In the gym, bright orange pylons could be used to create pathways for trucks or bodyboards. They can also identify environmental hazards such as tripping hazards, dips, or different surfaces. When going to a new environment, do a walkthrough through any new environment. Activities could also be created to encourage muscle development and body awareness. Familiarize the child with equipment and activities planned for outdoor gym time. Adapt equipment to allow the child to participate with their peers and be involved in play. For example, you can put bells in the balls, paint ladder steps bright colors, or paint lines on the bike track. Be sensitive to children who wear glasses, as glasses fog up in cold weather, smudge, or may fall off during play. And remember, some children may also need sunglasses. Also, consider the weather. If it's icy or snowy, the ground could be slippery. Some other strategies and activities to try Could be the buddy system, where you have children take turns to engage in play with a child who has a visual impairment. Consider choosing children with similar interests and who express an interest in being a buddy. Adding things to a fence so children can touch and feel their outdoor environment is a great way to add tactile play. Sensory tables or sensory bins are also ways to add tactile play. Large open spaces with more activity can be unpredictable and intimidating. Children with visual impairments will need additional adult support and encouragement to engage in activities and build their confidence and participation in these more challenging play activities. As with the indoor environment, try to make the outdoor space predictable by placing activities and toys in consistent spots. This is a list of resources which should be included in your packages. We also have a variety of resources in our resource library. Please talk to your resource consultant about borrowing any of these resources. Should you have any questions regarding this webinar, please talk to your resource consultant. Thank you for participating in this webinar. I would like to leave you with this clip from America's Got Talent. This young man is quite an inspiration and proof that anything is possible.